Do you want to tell us, I guess, today what we're doing?
Today we're on our way to Canopy Cancer Care on the North Shore in Auckland. So we're coming from South Auckland, so it's a bit of a long way in Auckland traffic, which is still terrible. And I'm going for my third round of big deal chemotherapy today. So I have 4 rounds of chemotherapy, 3 weeks apart, and this is the third one. I think I have been frightened. You know, it's not that I'm not frightened. It's pretty sobering, you know, when they tell you you have cancer, and then my particular diagnosis is not straightforward. You know, I've got a pretty serious form of breast cancer. You know, I think it's really specific to being a woman that you spend your life looking after everyone else, so you're really worried about how will it be for everyone else. So telling my husband was difficult. That very first conversation was difficult, but my husband's very pragmatic, so you know, it wasn't that hard. It was like, well, this is what it is.
I was positive about supporting her because my mum was diagnosed with it and had what was called a radical mastectomy when she was in her early 40s, I think, and my mum died at 93, so, and not of cancer. So my mum, I was optimistic with Deb's journey that it would be like my mother. You know, it would not hold her back or shorten her life. It would, you know, if you dealt with it effectively, then the ending could well be positive and probably would be. So I was optimistic that things would work out well.
Telling my children was a little bit harder because you worry about your kids a lot more and you want to know that they'll be okay. But again, my children, my youngest child's 29, so they're not little kids, and I knew they'd be worried, but they're adults, and you know, I could ring my son and tell him on the phone, but I had to wait till I got home to tell my daughter, and so it took her a while to kind of just settle down with the news and not to be so frightened.
I remember it like yesterday. We were kind of walking past each other. My mother's my next door neighbour, and she said, "I've got something to tell you." And I said, "Oh yeah?" And she goes, "I've got breast cancer." And it took me a second to catch up with what she'd actually said. So I said to her, "Sorry, what did you say?" Because I didn't know if I had initially registered what she had said to me. And she goes, "I've got breast cancer." And then I remember following her into her house, and we were standing in the kitchen and she sat down. And I remember starting to cry, and she said to me, "Don't cry because it's not about you." And I had to step myself away, and I returned to my house and gathered myself, and then went back to her because I think I was just in pure shock. My mother, to me, was somebody who was bulletproof. I think what people don't understand is they see her as this force within the medical field, but actually at the end of the day, she's somebody's mother, and she's my mother, and she's my brother's mother, and she's my children's grandmother. You know, she's more than just a health professional. She's somebody's person, if that makes sense. She's my dad's wife. So yeah, it kind of became something really personal too. My mother didn't want to share it with people. She wanted it to be kept really quiet, and we had to respect that.
Mum's overworked herself for coming up 20 years. And I'll wake up, you know, when I was a kid, 4 o'clock in the morning, and she's sitting on her laptop in the lounge working. Yeah, she doesn't stop working, that woman. But Good thing was that she caught on to it when she did. Just grateful that, you know, the medication's working. That's what I'm grateful for.
When I started to lose my hair, we were in the Cook Islands, and the first thing that happened was that I was in the shower and I realised that my hair was falling out and going down the drain, and thought, wow. And then the next thing was that I got out of the shower and brushed my hair and filled up the whole of the hand basin. I had long, thick hair, so my hair was down to my waist. I hadn't had a cut for a very long time, and I was pretty attached to my hair. Like a lot of Pacific women, hair is really important. We really appreciate good hair, and a really big part of identity. So I was offered what they call a cooling cap. What they do is they put a rubber cap on your head, quite tight like a bathing cap, and then they run ice cold water through it, and the intention is to stop the chemotherapy drugs from getting into your hair follicles so that you don't lose your hair. For me, it really wasn't comfortable for me, and made a choice that actually my hair was less important than being able to manage this process. And so I decided that I didn't want to wear the cap. But the downside is that it will take some time to grow back, and at some stage it will be long and thick again. And so it's only here, you know, at the end of the day, do you die or do you have hair? Well, you know, really, I'd like to survive and the hair will come back. Luckily before that, my good friend had organised for the wig lady to come and organise the wigs. So she had organised for me to go to her house, and the wig lady came, and trying on the wigs was really confronting, because that was one of the times where you can't just pretend it's not happening. People still find it shocking because it's probably the most obvious sign that you really do have cancer when you've lost your hair. So I think I'm really grateful that my dear friend had organised that, because I couldn't have done it myself. I knew that I needed to do it, but I couldn't organise it. It was just too hard. And so she said that she would do that for me, and it's an incredible gift. I think that as Pacific women, we often put our health needs last. Now that's not very sensible when we think about it logically, because if we're not well, we can't look after our family very well. So it's really important that we do put time aside. And things like cancer screening is really important, because if we find cancer early, then in most cases it can be treated and we will be okay. There's a fear. You know, when people say cancer, people think you're immediately going to die. And that's not the case anymore. That most cancers are really treatable, and if found early can be treated, and people will do very well. So cancer is not an immediate death sentence anymore. It used to be, but it's not like that now. You need to trust that your doctors and nurses around you will keep you safe and will look after you. And you need to trust that, there'll be an end to the process and it will finish and you will recover from it. I found that over that period, I really just needed to get through each day. And I think having a strong faith makes a difference, because you have to believe all the time that you're going to get better. I'm now kind of on the next stage of my journey where I've just started chemotherapy, and I take drugs every day for the next 5 years. I'll be scanned and monitored every year. If I don't take the drugs, then the risk of me having metastatic cancer that will kill me is quite high. And so even though taking the drugs now makes me feel sick, there's really no choice. And so it really is go hard or die. And I prefer to go hard than die. But also still thinking about how did this happen to me, how incredibly lucky I am that it happened to me now, that in 2 years' time I didn't find the cancer, because in 2 years' time I would probably be preparing to die. And so I feel really grateful that the timing was right. It's made people more precious to me. And it's made me think hard about, in the next 3 months, in the next month, what do I want to do? And really not taking it for granted that there are years left, because you never know. I think the other key milestone is actually coming back to my work family and being able to work again and feeling that there is a purpose again. Because it's very easy to be totally consumed, with yourself. And so I was totally consumed with just trying to get through every day. And now being able to get to that milestone of lifting my head up is fantastic. My family were able to love me and care for me like your family do. But it was my work friends that I could tell my deepest fears to, who understood, because they're all health people, understood just how challenging and frightening this was, and could walk alongside me in this journey. And so in particular, Dr. Debbie Ryan, Dr. Kiki Moati and Sir Colin, the people who have been most close to me on this journey have been outstanding. And so I'm just grateful for people, and for people's ability to be generous with their love and their compassion and their kindness.
The best practice is just to leave mum to crack it out. Don't get in her way. Just something I think people struggle with. My job is just to be supportive, in the best way possible. And that's just, whatever she needs, do it.
That's right.
Oh, can you see the balloons?
Yeah.
Oh, yes, balloons.
Yeah. Who's this lady?
She's a good mum. She's a good mum.
She just did basically what was required, and just went through, got everything done correctly, timely, and we then, I was optimistic that it would be fine. You never can tell, but I'm still optimistic.
We're really proud of her for what she's overcome. We're really sad that it has happened to her, because it must feel like she's really alone, but she's not. There's lots of things that I would say. Just that we're so lucky to have her. Just really, really lucky to have her. Yeah.
I have 5 grandchildren. I have 2 children. I have weddings to go to. I have more babies, I hope, to be born. I want to see my children keep living their lives. My mother's still alive. I still need to look after her. It would be really ironic if I died before she did, and she's turning 91 in a couple of weeks, so I don't intend to be doing that. I still have too much life to live and too many things to do. For me, the cancer's not going to define me. It's just part of my whole story, but it's not my only story. You get to choose to say this is the worst thing that could ever happen to me, and I've had dark moments, not to underestimate the impact this has. But really I haven't spent much time thinking about how terrible it all is, mostly just thinking about getting to the end of it.